Sarah Williams looked nervously around Buffalo Wild Wings, though she had done this many times before. She was always worried that she would meet someone familiar. The chances of this were slim since she chose the meeting place half an hour away from Dayton, but it didn't hurt to be careful. Only fools don't watch out, she thought, but that's why fools get caught. Sarah didn't want to meet people she knew. The chances of them mentioning to her husband where they saw her were something she didn't want to risk. Her husband Mike was busy helping someone at the General Motors parts factory with a production problem tonight, so this was the perfect opportunity for Sarah. It wasn't that she needed many opportunities or that they were difficult to find. She usually scheduled her meetings during daytime hours when Mike was at work, but the opportunity for a rare late-night encounter was too good to pass up. Sarah loved Mike with all her heart and would never do anything to jeopardize their marriage. She intended to grow old with Mike and spend their golden years traveling and visiting their grandchildren once they arrived. Losing Mike simply wasn't in her plans. Sarah and Mike had been married for 20 years. She knew everything about him. She was sure that she knew her husband better than he knew himself, but the fact was that they were stuck in a rut. Mike hadn't seen it yet, but it was there. Sarah was smart enough to understand that every marriage goes through ups and downs. Sarah knew that her best friend's marriage had broken down for this very reason. Her aunt and uncle divorced for the same reason. After years of being together, things get a little stagnant. As an above-average woman, Sarah understood that modern marriage was very different from what our ancestors experienced. There was no longer a need to fight for survival or to work very hard to feed oneself in the modern era. People are living much longer and are much more isolated from their peers than ever before. In the old days, people lived on plots of land and could be separated from their neighbors by relatively large distances. Even then, although they did not live very close to each other, everyone gathered together regularly at churches or other social events. In the modern era, people live much closer to each other, but in many cases they do not even know the names of their neighbors, let alone communicate with them. There are people who live next to each other for years and never speak to each other. The modern era has also brought with it a degree of flexibility in morality. Sarah loved Mike and didn't want their marriage to end, so she didn't see anything wrong with casual affairs. In her opinion, this only added urgency to her relationship with her husband. This did not threaten their marriage in any way. She even had clearly defined rules for what she did and how she did it. The first rule was that there were no repeat visits. She only met once, thus there was no danger of emotional attachments. It was only physical. All her emotional feelings were intended only for her husband. The second rule was that any intimacy she had was never something she wouldn't do or hadn't already done with Mike. Mike gave her more than just physical satisfaction. He made love to her. So there was no chance that she would ever replace him or hold him back. If she wanted to try something new intimately, it had to be with someone she trusted who wouldn't hurt her. That meant it had to be Mike. The third rule was that nothing she ever did could take the place of spending time with Mike. Her marriage was the most important thing in her life. It was superior to everything else. So if she was planning to meet someone and Mike suddenly came home, Mike won. She just didn't go. If she was meeting someone and Mike called, she would return home immediately, even if it was necessary to do so halfway through. Mike came first. The final rule was that she never, ever did anything at home. There was no way that she could disrespect her husband by doing anything in his home. Sarah wasn't going to do this forever either. This was only a temporary arrangement. Mike was trying hard to get a promotion to shift supervisor that would increase their security and reduce his workload. With a reduced workload, they would have more time to devote to each other. Then she would start doing things to bring the spark back into the bedroom. But to put the blame on Mike now, when he worked so hard for both of them, wouldn't be fair. So being a modern woman in a modern marriage, Sarah simply outsourced some of Mike's responsibilities. It's not that Mike was incapable. He was simply under enormous stress. He almost never had time to relax, but when they found time to unwind, it was wonderful. Sarah thought back to just 4 months ago when they went to Myrtle Beach. It was the best time of her life. She also noticed that many women were paying a lot of attention to her husband, but as usual, this big fool only noticed her. Sarah used Match.com to meet people. She never used her real name and never posted a profile herself. She only responded to profiles posted by others. This left no records that anyone could ever find. Sarah never responded to profiles posted by men looking for casual hookups or quick encounters. She knew that such men were predators. She only responded to profiles from men who were looking for long-term relationships, although she was not interested in them for more than a brief encounter. It seemed deceptive, but they could always refuse. None of them ever refused. Sarah also never searched for men on her home computer. She went to the library and used one of their free public computers. She created a different email address and never accessed that account at home or on her cell phone. She covered all her bases but was still nervous. You can't be too careful. What if she doesn't like me? Jake Thompson asked for the 3rd time. Jake, you're a great guy. You just need to get out and meet someone, Mike replied. I'm sure she'll like you. After all, she agreed to meet you, and you sent her a photo of yourself. If she didn't like you, she wouldn't agree to meet you. Mike shook his head again. The idiosyncrasies and quirks of dating in the modern era puzzled him. Mike was an old-school man. He was glad that he didn't have to deal with all the problems that Jake went through. He met his wife Sarah in college, and they had been together ever since. They raised 2 children who were now in high school and college. Let modern kids deal with modern problems. Mike was still madly in love with Sarah. Of course, she was no longer a young woman. Her figure had widened a little and her breasts sagged a little, but these things only endeared her to him more. He remembered sitting on their bed while she stood in front of the mirror and discovered the first wrinkles around her eyes or the first gray hair among the black ones. Of course, they missed dinner at the restaurant they were going to, but it was a magical night. The next morning, Mike asked her about his truck. Mike, are you thinking about buying another F-150? Sarah asked him in shock. The new ones really look almost exactly like the old classic ones we grew up with, honey. My truck still beats most of those new ones. It has the EcoBoost engine and is much more reliable. It's the perfect truck for me, Mike said, referring to his 2015 Ford F-150 Super Crew with all the upgrades. This truck makes almost 400 horsepower and gets better gas mileage than the old ones. Other than all the fancy electronics they're cramming in there now, it's simply a better truck. Besides, I know every little scratch and blemish on its paint. I was there for all of it, so it's all like memories that we share. It's the perfect truck for me. If it hadn't been wrecked, I would never have needed another truck. Then why did you bring this up? Sarah asked. I know everything about your truck, dear. I know how much you love it and prefer it to newer trucks, even though it's almost 10 years old. It may not be the ideal truck for someone else, but it's ideal for you. As far as I know, no one else has ever driven it, so I don't think anyone else knows how good or bad it is. I can't even drive it because I can't handle a manual transmission, but if it's perfect for you, that's all that matters. Mike smiled at Sarah as she sat in front of the mirror, deciding whether to dye her hair. I bring this up because we're not really talking about my truck, Sarah, Mike said. We're talking about you. I love you like I love that truck. You're perfect just the way you are. It doesn't matter that you're getting older or what others see in you. You may not be the perfect 20-year-old you were when we met, but I love you, and you're the only one I want. I know every scratch and blemish and every gray hair too, and I'm glad and proud that you're mine. Sarah started crying and rushed to him when he said this. She went back to bed with him and they reconnected. This time their intimacy was more romantic and less rushed. Both were late for work. Mike still considered himself lucky to have Sarah in his life to give him a good foundation. It's much easier for a man to go out and work when he has someone to come home to. Jake was a great young man. That's why Mike wanted to help him get a good start in life. Having the right woman in his life would not only help make Jake more focused but also happier. "Jake, you can do it," Mike said. "Mike, you should come with me," Jake said. "At least just show up at the start. You can sit in the crowd and text me if I'm acting too nervous or something. I can also call or text you if I get nervous or need help." Mike nodded in silent agreement. Half an hour later, Mike was following Jake's gray Kia down the road in his F-150. Looking at the car, Mike knew he would need to talk to Jake again. Jake needed to get rid of that damn car as soon as possible. A man's vehicle should say something about him, and a gray Kia said all the wrong things about Jake. The restaurant that Jake and the woman he was meeting chose was Buffalo Wild Wings. It didn't seem too expensive, but it was decent. This said several things about the woman. First of all, she wasn't after Jake's money, and secondly, she had reasonable taste. If only the place weren't so far from Dayton. Mike waited a few minutes after Jake went in so no one would think they were together. He got a seat in a secluded corner near the bar and ordered a Bud Light. He watched as Jake looked around the room. At first, Mike couldn't see the woman because Jake was blocking his view. They were chatting, and he saw Jake take out his phone. Mike felt his iPhone vibrate and looked at the screen. He had a message from Jake. It said, "She's older than I expected and not as pretty, but she seems nice. Should I stay?" Mike sent his message back to Jake. "Consider this practice. Have conversations and become more confident with new people. Leave your phone on and record the conversation. Tomorrow we can discuss what you said so you don't make the same mistakes when you find the one you really want. Plus, maybe you'll get lucky." Moments later, Jake sent another message to Mike. "Okay, I'll do it. Got to go. I told her I was texting a friend at work to say I won't be back today. She wants to go somewhere more private." Mike slumped in his seat, noticing that Jake had stood up. He tried to get a good look at the woman and finally saw her face. His heart stopped when he realized that the woman at Jake's table was his wife. What was Sarah doing here? Why was she dating Jake? Was this some kind of prank Sarah and Jake were playing on him? By the time Mike gathered his thoughts, Sarah and Jake had already left the restaurant. Mike stood up to run after them but was stopped by the waiter who brought him his beer. Mike paid for the beer and ran outside, but Jake and Sarah had already left. Mike walked slowly to his truck and tried to open the door. He pulled the door handle several times before remembering that he had to unlock it first. He took the keys out of his pocket, unlocked the truck, and got inside. He started the engine, and for the first time he did not enjoy the deep rumble of the EcoBoost engine and exhaust system. Mike usually didn't turn on the radio in the truck and left the windows down. He liked to listen to the sounds the truck made more than any music, but today was different. Mike didn't even notice the sound of the engine. He sat in the parking lot for a long time before he realized it. There was only one thought in his mind, and that was the question. Why? Mike didn't have to be home for a few more hours, which gave him plenty of time to think. It was obvious that he had some important decisions to make in his life. No good deed goes unpunished, he thought. He began trying to help Jake bring some stability into his life and lost stability in his own. He wanted to help Jake find a good woman to love instead of some frivolous person. Instead, he discovered that the woman he had loved for half his life was not who he thought she was. Now it seemed that half of Mike's life had been wasted. He thought he was the one to give Jake the benefit of his experience, only to find that he needed the answers himself. Now he only had questions. How long had Sarah been doing this? Why did she do this? Didn't she love him? He had no idea how to deal with it or what to do. He turned on the radio for background music and heard the news instead. On this day in 1975, the greatest tragedy on the Great Lakes occurred when the Edmund Fitzgerald. Mike changed the station. He didn't want to become even more depressed. He drove along the Miami River and watched as the summer heat created shimmers over the dark water. A large barge passed him, all silently. He barely noticed it, lost in his thoughts, until the large vessel sounded its horn. The big boat was trying to tell him something, but Mike couldn't figure out what it was. Sarah Williams pulled into her driveway, thinking about what a good time she had with the young man she had met. He wasn't an experienced lover, but he was eager and capable. If she had time to train him, he might one day become as good as her husband. He wasn't selfish and didn't seek only to satisfy himself. He seemed to genuinely care that she had fun. This was one of the reasons why she only chose men who were looking for relationships. Suddenly, an alarm bell went off in Sarah's head. Her usually empty driveway was not empty. Mike's bright red F-150 was parked right in front of the house. He wasn't supposed to be home for another hour. Sarah felt herself begin to sweat as she inserted the key into the lock and entered the house. She looked around for Mike and couldn't find him. He was outside on the deck, drinking a Bud Light and looking at the moon. She had already showered at the motel, so she came out and sat next to him. "Hello, darling," she said. "I wasn't expecting you so soon. I can prepare something if you want." "I'm not hungry," he said. He didn't ask her where she was, so Sarah didn't talk about it either. However, there was something wrong with her husband. For the past 20 years, unless he was angry about something, he would always kiss her or touch her whenever they were close. It didn't matter if they saw each other all day or just for 5 minutes. He always kissed her or stroked her hand. He told her that he only did this with her. He also told her that it was because if something happened to one of them, he wouldn't want their lives to end with the regret of not kissing her goodbye before one of them died. He just sat there looking up at the sky, and Sarah thought it was unusual. She moved closer to him, expecting him to hug her. Mike just sat there looking up. She moved even closer and smiled at him. This movement brought them closer so that her right thigh touched his left. He didn't move away from her, which was good, but he didn't hug her or grab her or even do anything to acknowledge her presence. Then Sarah knew for sure that something was wrong, but she didn't know what to do. Being a straightforward person, she simply asked, "Mike, is something wrong?" He didn't say a word, just looked up at the sky as if she wasn't talking. Sarah was on the verge of panic. Did he know? How could he know? She was so careful. There was no way he could find out. She sat next to him for another 5 minutes and then came up with an idea. "I'm cold," she said. "Maybe you should grab a jacket or go inside." "No," he said, his voice monotone. There was no anger in him, but there was no usual liveliness either. "Mike, let's go to bed, honey," she said. "I'm not tired," he said. "Me too," she said, smiling at him and taking his hand. "I'll come in a while," he said. Sarah was puzzled and worried. Her intimate life with Mike had not been as frequent as she wanted, but he had never rejected her until that moment. Something was definitely wrong. On the other hand, she knew Mike better than anyone else on the planet. If he knew what she did, he would be furious. He would scream and demand to know who the guy was. He was upset about something, but she was pretty sure he didn't know what she had done. She stood up and headed towards their house. "I'll wait for you, darling," she said. "Don't make me wait long." As soon as she entered the house, Sarah took another shower. This time she spent a really long time in the shower. She washed her hair and made sure that no part of her body was left untouched by the soap. She then blow-dried her short hair and lay in their bed without clothes to wait for Mike. She recalled their life together. The last time he felt this sad was because of stress. He was considering quitting the job he was working at. This was a big decision because instead of staying where he had been for some time, he was considering moving to another company. If it didn't work, it could have affected not only him but her and their children as well. Mike was always very careful when it came to the well-being of his family. He always put her and their children first. She needed to convince him that no matter what was wrong, they would get through it together. She also needed to make sure everything was okay between them. She fell asleep burdened with her own worries. When she woke up the next day, she was still alone in her bed. She looked out the window and saw that Mike's truck was gone. She dialed his number on her mobile phone and waited. She heard the call music while she was waiting for the connection. It was Metallica's Enter Sandman, one of Mike's favorite songs and also his ringtone. As she walked down the stairs, she saw his phone on the kitchen counter. Mike must have been really out of his mind. He never left that damn iPhone anywhere. If they went on vacation, he took the phone with him. She dialed his office. Mike's assistant Emma answered the phone. Sarah never liked Emma. They were complete opposites. Whereas Sarah was a middle-aged woman beginning to show her age, Emma was only 24. She started working for Mike right after graduating from Ohio State and seemed to be getting more beautiful every day. Sarah had short dark hair while Emma had long, rich brown hair with blonde highlights. Sarah was curvy while Emma was slim and fit. The thing Sarah hated most about the girl was that she was as completely devoted to Mike as Sarah was. Emma even turned down an opportunity to get a promotion to the main office last year to stay with Mike. This made Sarah's ears stand on end. Not that she had any reason to worry. Sarah became friends with several people working at Mike's factory. If something was going on, she would know about it. She heard that Emma was flirting with Mike all the time, but Mike didn't seem to notice or do anything about it. Sarah thought about asking Mike to find another assistant, but decided it was better not to. First of all, Mike never showed any intention of being unfaithful with Emma or anyone else. Secondly, if Emma left, then her replacement could also pursue Mike and be more successful at it. Finally, there was also the fact that if Emma was interested in Mike, she would have made sure that no other woman around them got close to him. Thus, Emma, without even knowing it, became Sarah's watchdog. Sarah also maintained a polite, if cold, relationship with Emma. Emma, when Mike gets there, tell him to call me, Sarah said. Sorry, Mrs. Williams, Emma said. Mike is already here. He's early for a big meeting with the plant manager. He'll probably be busy all day. From the looks of it, the meeting will keep them here late into the evening and even continue for most of tomorrow. You'll probably have a better chance of talking to him when he gets home tonight than I have, but I'll tell him you called. That's fine, Sarah thought. It's clear that something really big is going on at Mike's job. This is something that worries him very much. But it must not be too bad. He could easily find another job at one of the other GM supplier plants, and maybe if he did, he wouldn't have to work so hard. This news calmed Sarah down a bit, but she was still annoyed with Emma. As soon as the girl finished saying what she wanted to say, she hung up. She didn't give Sarah a chance to respond to what she said or even say goodbye. There was another very subtle cutting jab that the girl made. She called Sarah Mrs. Williams. Calling her Williams implied that she and Sarah were casual acquaintances or just people who knew each other through work but were not close. This was despite the fact that Emma had been to their house several times for parties or celebrations that had nothing to do with work. Sarah often told Emma to call her Sarah. The girl's refusal to do so was offensive because it sent the message that Emma simply did not want to be friendly with Sarah. On the other hand, she called Mike by his first name, and even the way she said Mike was so familiar. It was almost as if the girl's mouth was enjoying the sound of it. Sarah might have to reconsider her decision to keep Emma as an assistant for her husband. The look on Emma's face when she hung up was ominous. If looks could kill, Emma would be convicted and found guilty of Sarah's murder within moments. As she headed towards the door that separated Mike's office from her own, someone walked into her office. It was Bill Martinez, the production supervisor. He often came into the office under the pretext of discussing one safety issue or another with Mike. Bill took one look at Emma in her short skirt and swallowed loudly. She whipped her head around to look at him, and his eyes grew even larger as her mane of hair fell over her shoulders. "Is there anything I can help you with, Mr. Martinez?" she asked, fearing the answer. "No, I just came by to ask Mike a few questions about the new quality standards," he said. Emma knew it was nonsense. Mike handled quality control issues, but specific production standards were handled by the floor supervisors. It simply wasn't Mike's job to set line standards. "I'll tell him you came by," she said, beaming with a smile. "He's in a meeting with Jake right now." "Okay, thanks," Martinez said. He watched as Emma turned to check on Mike. He got what he wanted. She turned around, and he got to enjoy the sight of her figure before she realized what he was doing. Normally, Emma would have waited until he left, but she needed to find out what was going on with Mike. Before she got to the door, it opened, and Mike and Jake walked out. She noticed that as soon as the door began to open, Bill Martinez ran out of the office like a cockroach when someone turns on the light. "Thanks for your help, Mike," Jake smiled. "It's great to have a mentor like you." Emma noticed that Jake was smiling happily, and Mike looked even worse than when he walked in. Jake was a small, homely man in whom Emma simply had no interest. He wasn't creepy or weird, but she found him boring. Today was different, however. Jake was grinning from ear to ear like a schoolboy learning about something for the first time. He even walked up to her and looked her in the eye. "When I walked into Mike's office, something turned this gray mouse into a tiger," Jake said, looking straight into her eyes and smiling as he walked past. Emma prepared to follow Mike back to his inner office, but was surprised when Jake blocked her path. "Emma, are you busy tonight?" Jake asked, looking straight at her chest. "Jake," Emma replied sharply, "my eyes are up here and I'm busy every evening." She then walked around him and followed Mike into his office, or tried to, because she found his door locked. Emma knocked on Mike's door. When he didn't answer or open it, she used her emergency key and opened it herself. She entered the office quietly and was unprepared for what she found. Mike had come very early in the morning, which in itself was unusual. Then he told her that if Sarah called, to tell her that he would be busy in meetings all day. This meant that he and his wife had probably had a fight. If Mike and Sarah were fighting, there was no doubt whose side Emma would be on. But seeing Mike, who was usually tough as a rock, with his head down on the table, angered Emma even more than Sarah's call. "I'm going to kill her," Emma thought. She walked around the table and began to gently massage Mike's back and shoulders. She did this for a long time, enjoying the unusual closeness and intimacy. To most observers, this would not seem like anything inappropriate, but the sensations it gave Emma, who had long been in love with her boss, caused a storm inside her. "Thanks, Mike said. He touched her hand gently, and this caused a new wave of tingling to run through her body. "Mike, what did she do this time?" Emma asked. "That's not what I want to talk about," Mike said. "Emma," she replied sharply, "whatever upset you so much is my business. We're a team. If you're not in the game, the whole team suffers. So if I have to suffer, I want to know why. Besides, you told Jake, and I've known you and worked for you much longer than he has. You're going to start hurting my feelings here." "Jake doesn't know anything," Mike snapped. "I trust you more than anyone, Em. You already know that." Emma was inwardly relieved that he said he trusted her more than anyone. He didn't say more than anyone but Sarah, or put any conditions on his statement. He trusted her more than anyone. Her heart was doing somersaults. Then Mike, go ahead and tell me. Maybe I can help, she said. At such times, her southern accent became more pronounced, and her voice trembled slightly. Mike hesitated and then began to speak. I know that Sarah is cheating on me, he said. Emma was shocked. Her mind was racing. Maybe she'd go to Mike's house and confront Sarah. After all, the satisfaction she would get from confronting Sarah for hurting Mike would be worth any consequences. Emma realized that Mike needed to make his own decisions. Her job was simply to be there, support him, and help him pick up the pieces regardless of his wishes. She knew that, in her opinion, Mike should have divorced Sarah, but realistically speaking, Emma thought that Mike should have divorced Sarah for a good reason. So there was nothing new there. But why did Jake sleep with Sarah? Emma asked. It doesn't make sense. You went with him to help, and he betrayed you. Plus, no offense, but Sarah is pretty old, even for someone as desperate as Jake. You have to remember, Mike said. Jake has never been to my house. He's never met Sarah. The only pictures he's ever seen are the ones on my desk at work. They were taken over 10 years ago. Her hair was a different color back then, and she's gotten a little older since then. He had no idea that the woman who answered his profile was my wife. And I didn't see her well until they were getting ready to leave. By the time I left the restaurant, they had already left. Maybe he was lying about them being intimate, Emma suggested. Guys always lie about it. Bad luck, Mike said. I told him to record their conversation on his iPhone. That way, if he said or did something stupid, we could talk about it. So on his next date, whether it was with her or someone else, he would do better. Jake was so nervous that he forgot to turn off his phone. He recorded everything, and it wasn't his fault. Jake was such a gentleman that it was perfect. She suggested they go to a motel. She was the one who took all the first steps. Don't worry about it, Emma, she said sharply. We fire Jake and divorce her cheating. Emma suddenly stopped. She allowed her anger to make her more aggressive than she should have been. Sorry, Mike, she said. I'm just so angry that she could do this to you. We'll handle this the way you want. I've been thinking about this for a long time, Mike said. None of this is Jake's fault. He had no idea Sarah was married to me. And if you listen to the recording, she was in the driver's seat. So what do you want to do? Emma asked. Should I start looking for divorce lawyers or marriage counselors? Honestly, I just don't know, Mike said. Maybe because I encountered this less than 24 hours ago. I'm just in shock. I'm surprised and hurt, and I have a lot of feelings that I can't even begin to describe. I never thought I'd be in this situation. I never thought Sarah would do something like that. I really believed that she loved me. I thought we'd spend the rest of our lives together. Sometimes when I hear about divorces, I understand all these modern things, but I always thought that the only way for Sarah and me to separate was if one of us died. I've even always thought about what I would do if Sarah left before me. Would I date someone else? Or would I just grow old taking care of our grandchildren? And what would you do? Emma asked, asking the question she was most afraid to hear the answer to. The dating idea seems right for me, Mike said. Honestly, I wish I could feel something now, he said. But to be honest, all I feel right now is emptiness. I'm hurt. I'm upset with Sarah, but it's not even anger. All I feel right now is nothing. I wish I could just lash out at her, scream, and figure out what to do. I'm sure it will come in time. So maybe you could find me a marriage counselor and a divorce lawyer? Emma asked. She listened to his every word but still did not understand what he was asking. Yes, Mike said. I need a marriage counselor and a divorce lawyer. You choose them. Emma nodded her head, and all her beautiful hair fell over her shoulders. She already had a plan in her head. She needed to find out who the best divorce lawyer in the state was. Maybe she'd find the best divorce lawyer in the country. Then she had to find the worst marriage counselor in the world, possibly even the worst marriage counselor in the universe. She wanted to find someone so bad that he would just give up and tell all his clients to just get a divorce. Perhaps she could find someone so bad that he didn't even show up for scheduled meetings. She'd get to it right away. Emma took Mike to lunch that day. She took him to Bob Evans. She still laughed about it because someone of Mike's age and income should really be going to a restaurant that wasn't a chain, but his unpretentious side was just one of the things she loved about him. And if she played her cards right, she would have the opportunity to learn much more about him. While they ate, Emma just listened to Mike talk. She listened as he talked about how he met Sarah and all the things he loved about her. However, as the conversation progressed, he began to mention some things that he did not like about his wife. Emma memorized all this information for future use. She spent a lot of time touching him and gently massaging and comforting him both physically and mentally. She just wanted him to feel loved and cared for. Before they finished lunch, she gave him contact information for a counselor and a lawyer. A few hours later, Mike Davis drove into his driveway. He walked past Sarah into the house without saying a word. Sarah turned off the TV and stood up as soon as she heard Mike's F-150 in the driveway. She spent the entire day preparing his favorite dinner. She also wore one of his favorite outfits. She wanted him to feel comfortable, and maybe then he would tell her what was going on. Couldn't be that bad. Of course, Mike had many years dedicated to this work, and she knew that good jobs were hard to come by. But with Mike's skills and experience, it wouldn't be difficult for him to find another job at Ford or Chrysler. Plus, they had a decent amount of money saved up over the years. One way or another, they would get by. Sarah turned and smiled as the door opened. Mike didn't even look at her. He simply walked past her and went upstairs. She stood there for a second with a smile frozen on her lips. Then she got angry. Mike had never treated her so badly in all the years they had been together. If he treated her like that, they would never have gotten married, and Sarah wasn't going to put up with it now. She ran upstairs to their bedroom and slipped on the last step. She fell face down in front of their bedroom, tearing her dress. Now she was even more angry. The dress was one of her favorites, as was Mike's. She opened the door and entered their bedroom, but no one was there. She looked into the adjoining bathroom, and there was no one there either. Finally, she tried to go into the guest room, and there her husband lay looking at the ceiling. "Mike!" she screamed. Her anger over the ruined dress and her husband's strange behavior overpowered her common sense, and she began to shout at him. "What the hell is wrong with you?" Mike just looked at her like she was crazy. Sometimes it takes a lot of grievances or a pattern of behavior for a person to change. Sometimes not. Sometimes it can be the smallest thing that disturbs the balance. Sarah's actions the night before had put a significant strain on their marriage, more than she knew. Mike vacillated between wanting to confront her and simply writing off her actions as a one-time incident and moving on. He didn't feel right letting her get away with it, but at the same time, he wasn't sure he wanted a divorce. Sarah's scream was the last straw. Mike suddenly sat down on the edge of the bed and simply smiled. Sarah saw the smile and completely misinterpreted it. "What's so funny to you, dear?" she asked. "You," Mike said. Sarah was shocked. She couldn't understand what was happening. Mike suddenly stood up and walked into their bedroom. He went straight to his closet and started packing his things. "Are you going on a business trip again?" Sarah asked. "Is this one of those trips where I can go with you?" "No to both questions," Mike said calmly. "Then why are you packing?" Sarah asked. "If you think about it, I'm sure you can figure it out," Mike said. Sarah just stood there and looked at him. He took everything he could pack. He moved quickly and very confidently. "It's because of that little witch in your office," isn't it? Sarah said sharply. You slept with her, and now you want to move in with her. Mike simply turned and looked at Sarah as if she had grown a second head. This has nothing to do with Emma, Mike said. I didn't sleep with her and never have. But who knows what might happen in the future. I knew it was because of her, Sarah said sharply. I want you to fire her tomorrow. She's always flirting with you. It's good that someone is looking out for me, Mike said. Mike, you're an idiot, Sarah said sharply. I'm not rejecting you. I had my period last week. You know how much I suffer at that time. Yesterday was the first day that I could do anything, and I tried to be intimate with you when you came home. You refused, remember? So if you're mad because you didn't get what you wanted, you better grow up. She approached him. I want you as much as you want me, but after 20 years together, you should already know how my cycle works. She sighed. Maybe the reason you don't know is because I'm not important to you. I'm just someone you can come home to and be intimate with whenever and however you want. If I can't satisfy you, then I'm nothing to you. Is that what you want, Mike? Mike continued to pack his things. Well, Mike, if that's what you want, this is it, Sarah said. The thought of Mike being physically close to her was actually starting to excite Sarah. She lay down on the bed. Mike didn't even slow down. He grabbed the suitcases he had packed and headed down the stairs. Sarah jumped out of bed and ran after him, shouting the whole way. She made it to the bottom of the stairs just in time to hear the door slam shut. She opened the door and stepped out onto the porch of her house, still in her nightgown. She was just in time to see the mailman walk up onto her porch. He stared at her. Sarah realized the situation and decided that since he had already seen everything, she would run after Mike. She grabbed the handle of his truck door and missed just as he drove away. Sarah slowly walked back into the house, wondering what the hell had happened to Mike. A flash of something white caught her eye, and she looked down at the floor. It was a business card that must have fallen out of Mike's pocket. When she looked at the card, she realized that she had been putting too much pressure on Mike. He was probably suffering from some kind of stress. The card was from a marriage and emotional therapy counselor. Her poor baby was so stressed he had to see a therapist, and she just started yelling at him. All the pressure he faced at work and the stress they had at home played a role. He just wanted to be alone for a while. When he got home, he just went upstairs and laid down on the bed, and she went crazy. She needed to find him and convince him to come home. She called his cell phone and then remembered that it was still lying on the kitchen counter. She had no way to contact him until he calmed down, so she decided to just stay home and sit by the phone. When he calmed down, he would call her. They had been married for 20 years, and neither of them could even imagine how to live without each other. She decided to give him a day or two to calm down before going crazy. She called the counselor and tried to find out what was wrong with Mike. Once she convinced the counselor that she was Mike's wife, he still couldn't give her any information about Mike or what he would be receiving treatment for. But the counselor told her that if Mike gave his permission, she could be involved. 2 days later, Sarah called Mike's office. She didn't want to talk to Mike unless he was ready. She really wanted to talk to that useless young woman who worked for Mike. "Hello, Emma," Sarah began. She only heard a beep. They must have been disconnected. Probably wasn't a power outage. Even after all the time she worked for Mike, this stupid girl probably still couldn't work the phone system properly. Sarah called again. "Emma." The beep sounded again. Emma had just hung up, not once but twice. "Wait until Mike finds out what she did. He'll fire this stupid girl immediately." Sarah grabbed her coat and purse and drove to Mike's office. She took the elevator to his floor and entered his office. Emma barely raised her head when Sarah entered. "Why did you hang up?" Sarah asked sharply. "Get your things. You're fired." "You can't fire me, Mrs. Williams. You don't work here," Emma said. No, but Mike can, and as soon as I leave his office he will, Sarah said. Do you have a recording? Emma asked. I don't need a damn recording to see my own husband, you stupid, Sarah snapped. Emma pressed a button on her intercom and simply smiled. There's no point in trying to smile and be nice now, Sarah blurted out. Emma continued to smile. Sarah walked past her and went to Mike's door. She turned the knob and found it locked. Do you have a key to this damn door? Sarah asked. Emma smiled and nodded her head. So why are you sitting there like an idiot? Open the damn door. Just as Sarah began her tirade, 2 large security guards entered the office. Ma'am, there's no reason for such language, said the first guard. Hi, Melvin, Emma said. He nodded to her and smiled. She wants to see Mike, but she doesn't have an appointment. Plus, he left me instructions not to take calls from her. Besides, he's not even in the building right now. He's with his lawyer. Could you escort her out of here? We both heard her insult you, said the second guard. Do you want to press charges? We could hold her until the police come. I like this idea, Emma smiled. They probably won't do anything serious other than take her to the station, but it will be documented how she's been behaving. The 2 men escorted Sarah out of the room. You're going to pay for this, Sarah screamed. Several people in the office heard her and saw her being taken out. She turned to Emma as the guards each grabbed her arm and pulled her away. Several people came out of their offices to see what was happening. One of them was Jake. He saw Sarah being led out of Mike's office and heard her screaming and yelling. When their eyes met, Sarah fell silent. In turn, Jake looked at her intently. When the guard took her away, he went straight to Emma's office. Who is this woman? He asked Emma. Why was she here? Emma looked at Jake with obvious irritation. Jake almost recoiled when he saw the indignation in her gaze. What did I do to you? He asked. Why are you looking at me like that? You didn't have to do anything to me, Emma snapped. She closed the door, and Jake followed Emma into Mike's inner office. We probably shouldn't be here if Mike isn't here, Jake said hesitantly. He had a feeling that Emma had brought him into the office for something illegal. He wasn't against the idea but would prefer to do it in a place where he wouldn't risk losing his job. You know, maybe we should wait. A lot of people saw us come in here and close the door. Suddenly he noticed that she was just standing there looking at him while he was staring at her. Sorry, he said, but you're so beautiful. Jake, shut up, Emma said sharply. How can one person be so stupid, so clueless, and still functioning? What? Jake said. Jake, I don't care if you look at my body, Emma smiled. If only you understood that this is a waste of your time. I am absolutely not attracted to you. If you were the last man on earth, I would start dating women. As far as I remember, you always looked at me like some kind of strange old pervert. But you're not a strange old pervert. You're worse. You're a healthy man about my age. Why aren't you looking for someone who's interested in you? Jake sat down on the table. His newly found confidence was gone. So Jake, the woman you were dating didn't want to fall in love with you or anyone else. She was just looking for intimacy. Now you're in the middle of what could be a divorce case. Jake, she has a husband and 2 children. Is that what's made you so proud and confident lately? Jake, you're really feeling good about yourself because you finally had an encounter, not realizing that you've destroyed a family in the process. Jake dropped his head to his chest. He looked up, and his whole expression changed. But he began. You didn't know? Did you, Jake? Emma asked. It's not your fault, right? You probably also didn't know that her husband found out about what she did. You probably weren't the first person she cheated with, if that's any consolation, Jake. But you were the worst. Why am I the worst? Jake began again. Before he could finish his thought, Emma crossed the office and was in his face. For a moment, Jake felt afraid. He was sure she was going to hit him. Jake couldn't understand why she was so angry with him. "Because you're the one who got caught, the stupid one," Emma replied sharply. "It doesn't matter if that old woman slept with 50 guys. None of them hurt her husband because he didn't know about them. You, Jake, are the one who, as usual, ruined everything and destroyed the family." "Emma, I'm sorry," Jake said. His voice sounded like he was on the verge of tears. Emma just looked at him with anger. "I didn't do it on purpose. I'm just like everyone else. I'm lonely, and I'm tired of being alone. I was just looking for someone too." Jake's voice cracked, and tears appeared in the corners of his eyes. "We were together for 20 years, Emma. Damn you, I wanted it to end. But it didn't. I didn't want him to suffer like that. Damn. I'd give anything to get them back together again. I don't mind waiting for him. He's worth it." Emma was now muttering to herself and began to cry. "What does this have to do with you, Emma?" Jake asked. "Is this woman related to you?" "No, fool," said Emma. "Do you even know her name?" "Of course," said Jake. "Her name is Ginger. Ginger Grant," Jake said. "Jake, you're an idiot," Emma snapped. "Ginger Grant is the redhead from Gilligan's Island. That woman is Sarah Williams." Jake sank further onto the table. The pose he adopted made it appear as if he had no spine or any bone structure. He began to sob. "I didn't know. I didn't know," he repeated over and over. The phone on Emma's desk rang, breaking the moment. Emma ran to her desk and picked up the phone. She talked for a few moments, and Jake couldn't understand her conversation. She then returned to the office and looked at Jake. "Jake, get out of here," she said. "It was Mike. He's on his way here. I told him to stop by the house and get his phone, which he left there, but it shouldn't take him more than 15 minutes. Go and get back to work." "But I have to tell him how sorry I am," Jake said. "And I'm sorry for all the times I looked at you. I'll never do that again, just because you're so beautiful." "Jake, you don't look at me because I'm pretty," Emma said. "If that were the case, you'd be looking at my face. It's not your fault, and you're not the only one here who does this. There are 3 types of you perverts. Type 1 looks at my chest, Type 2 looks at my behind, and Type 3 looks at my legs. Maybe I was just taking it out on you for all of them. I guess that's just how most men are." "But you're really beautiful," Jake said. "Very beautiful." "Jake, what color are my eyes?" Emma asked, closing her eyes as she asked. Blue," Jake asked. "Jake, my eyes are brown, just like my hair. Did you even notice that I have eyes?" Mike doesn't blame you for what happened. He's still in shock. He's suffering a lot, but he doesn't know what he's going to do. And the creature, as far as I know, doesn't even know that he knows. "Did you give her your phone number?" Jake nodded. "Well, when the police are done with her, which won't take long, she'll call you. If you really want to do something good for Mike, don't let her know that Mike knows. In fact, don't let her know that you know Mike. It's a very large company with a lot of employees. There's a very good chance you both could work here without knowing each other," Emma said. Jake nodded and returned to his own office. Sarah Williams was furious. She was angrier than she had ever been in her life. As soon as she pulled into her street, she noticed Mike's F-150 pulling out of their driveway and heading in the opposite direction. She tried to call him from the police station but remembered that he did not have a phone. The police did not bring any charges against her, but they recorded a complaint and warned her to stay away from Emma. Now that Sarah had calmed down, she realized that she had handled the situation poorly. The best way to deal with this would be to wait a few days until Mike came out of his funk. Then she would do what she should have done in the first place. She would seduce Mike, and after they made love, she would ask him to find another assistant. It was time for Emma to learn her place. Sarah and Mike had been together for 20 years. They had children and a wonderful life. Mike was kind of depressed right now, but every marriage goes through its ups and downs. This was the norm in modern marriage. The most important thing was that she loved Mike, and he loved her. Case closed. Sarah entered the house. She was so angry last night that she forgot to put the food away. All the time she spent preparing this dinner and all the money she spent on meat and other ingredients was wasted. She went upstairs and took a shower. Coming out of the shower, she lay down without clothes on her bed. She was so tired she needed sleep. All the drama she had experienced that morning had left her exhausted. When Mike walked into his office, he felt a little better. It was like after a shot. First, it hurts like hell. The pain is so intense that it blocks all other sensations and stimuli, but after a few hours, it just becomes a deep, sharp pain. Sarah's betrayal still hurt like hell, but it was a deep, sharp pain. He still felt it very strongly, but it no longer blocked out everything else that was happening. He saw Emma sitting at her desk, answering the phone. She hung up and wrote something down on her notepad. Mike waved at her and, for the first time, noticed that she was angry with him. He walked into his office and was about to sit down at his desk when he heard the door slam behind him. The door slammed so hard that the wall shook. He reacted like a startled deer and jumped back almost a foot. He turned around and saw that it was Emma who had slammed the door. She stood in front of him, breathing so heavily she was almost hyperventilating. Mike tried not to notice that each breath made her chest rise and fall, and the view was magnificent. The guards told me something about what happened. I'm so sorry, Mike said. You shouldn't have to put up with this from Sarah or anyone else. You have every right to be angry. Who cares about your idiotic wife? Emma replied sharply. I'm mad at you. What have I done? Mike asked. Why the hell are you staying at some cheap motel, Mike? Emma screamed. Emma, I was going to tell you because I knew you'd be worried. Mike began. I thought a lot and left Sarah last night. Mike, I Googled the motel you called from. This is not the best place for you. There are probably questionable people there, and you are too vulnerable right now. I need to find you a safe place, Emma said. But, Mike began. No buts, Emma replied sharply. Have you seen a therapist to try to salvage this disaster? No, I went to a lawyer to try to end this disaster, Mike said quietly. Emma sadly and silently shook her head. You can tell me about it at lunch. Mike, you're paying, she said, closing the door softly. The door didn't quite close correctly. She would need to call someone for maintenance to fix it. She walked past her desk and into the office supply closet. She took a deep breath and finally allowed herself to show her true feelings. Oh yes, she said quietly, clenching her fist. After a while, Emma looked at Mike across the restaurant table. They went to Bob Evans for lunch. This was Emma's favorite place for comfort food. She knew Mike preferred the local diner, but she was in the mood for their pot roast. Emma ordered the pot roast dinner, and Mike, true to his habits, ordered the steak. Honey, you won't like this steak, Emma laughed. Why order a steak from a family restaurant? We'll go to the steakhouse for dinner. Tell me about the visit to the lawyer. Honestly, it was an eye-opener, Mike said. I came expecting to tell him how she cheated on me and to hear how I could keep most of our assets. He very quickly made me understand that it doesn't matter who did what. Justice and law are not only two completely different things, but they don't even live in the same area and don't like each other. Sarah could have hung a sign on our front porch that said, "We'll sleep around for food," and spent most of the day entertaining sailors. In the eyes of the law, she would still be entitled to half of our assets. If she had even had relations with sailors for free, Even after I gave her half of everything we own, I would have to pay her alimony. It's not fair, Emma said. This is not about fairness, Mike said. It's about the law. 20 minutes before the end of the day, Emma brought some documents into Mike's office to sign. We'll be leaving soon, she said. We need to stop by your cheap motel and pick up your things. For what? Mike asked. Emma's eyes flashed again, and he remembered her anger earlier that day. I already told you that I found a better place for you, Emma said. We'll move your things, get you settled, and then you can treat me to dinner. Mike nodded in agreement. He noticed Emma's anger faded, and her smile lit up the room as he agreed with her. Mike wanted to do something. Any action would be better than returning to his hotel room again. His iPhone rang twice that day. Both times it was Sarah. Both times he sent the calls to voicemail and then deleted the messages without fully listening to them. In both cases, she started with something like, I don't understand what's wrong with you. Obviously, she still had no idea that he knew about her actions. Emma followed Mike back to his motel. She looked around and shook her head. She looked through all his things, even his underwear drawer. Once he had packed all his belongings back into their suitcases and loaded them into the trunk of his truck and into the back seat, they drove off. Mike noticed that Emma kept writing things down. He wondered what she was taking notes about this time. He followed her to the new, better place she had found for him. They stopped in front of a large, well-lit, beautifully decorated building. Emma got out of her car and picked up one of Mike's suitcases. Mike thought she must have known the building manager. It looked like she had found him an apartment. They took the elevator to the 5th floor, and Emma took out her keys and opened the door. Mike looked around and found himself inside a nicely furnished apartment. Who lives here? He asked. We are, Emma said. Mike opened his mouth to start telling Emma that he couldn't stay with her and saw her eyes light up again. But, he began. We'll talk about it over dinner, Emma said. For now, stay in my guest bedroom. It's the one on the right. Mike put his suitcases in the room Emma showed him. He knew he shouldn't even be thinking about it. Perhaps it would be better to just go home until he found another place. 10 minutes later, they were in Mike's F-150, speeding down the highway. They agreed not to talk about work, Sarah, or anything serious until dinner. Until then, they were just two friends going out for a nice dinner. Their problems would still be there after they ate. After an hour or so, Emma looked across the table at Mike and smiled. I'm mad at you, she said. For what this time? He asked. It was the best steak I've ever eaten, she replied sharply. Why do you always take me to Bob Evans? I thought Bob Evans was your favorite place, Mike said. It was, Emma smiled. Okay, honey, we can start having a serious conversation. Emma, I appreciate the offer, but I can't stay with you, Mike said. And you should probably know that I had a chance this afternoon to think things over, and I have no intention of divorcing Sarah. Emma looked offended. Are you going to stay with her after everything she did to you? She asked quietly. To hell with it, Mike replied sharply. I just don't see the point in giving her half of what I worked so hard for 20 years. I gave her everything she asked for. I was there for her through thick and thin, and this is what I got in return. Think about all the chances that I had to cheat on her, but I never did. So if the law is not on my side, then I'll just leave her. Let her stay with the house, but good luck paying for it. Plus, I'll probably say I'll never get married again, so I don't need a divorce. Mike, what does this have to do with staying with me? Emma asked. Emma, you're a wonderful young woman. You don't need some angry, resentful middle-aged guy getting in the way of your lifestyle. Besides, what will people think of you living with a man? He asked. Mike, you're a fool. You think I'm doing this out of nobility? Emma asked. I have my reasons for wanting you to stay with me. Believe me, I gain something from this. You're not going anywhere until I say you can." Emma looked into Mike's eyes and didn't blink. Mike stared back at her, and for a long moment, neither of them wanted to back down. And then Mike blinked. "Glad we got that worked out," Emma said. Over the next few weeks, Sarah called Mike every day. He never spoke to her. He talked to the kids when they called and even talked to his parents and his in-laws when they called, but he didn't explain any of his reasons for not coming home. Finally, Sarah began to come up with her own reasons. She was sure that Mike had found another woman. How the hell could he cheat on her after 20 years of marriage? She hired a lawyer and filed for divorce. She didn't really want to divorce and told her lawyer so. Her plan was to force Mike to return to her by threatening divorce. At the very least, he had to come to the meeting so they could talk. The meeting was scheduled for July 8th, 3 days after the July 4th weekend. Sarah also tried to call Jake. He also refused to take her calls. This surprised her. Even when she hinted that she might be interested in repeating their encounter, he hung up. It didn't really matter to Sarah. He wasn't very experienced anyway. She had always assumed it would be a one-time adventure. She just didn't have time to find someone else. Finally, she got her lucky break. Her mother called her and reminded her about the July 4th barbecue. Usually, they alternated whose house they spent the holiday at. One year with Mike's parents, the next year with Sarah's parents, and other years with Mike and Sarah. This year it was Sarah's parents' turn. Mike and Sarah's daughter Madison would not attend. She spent the holiday with her boyfriend's family. So it would be Sarah, Mike, Sarah's parents, their son Tyler and his girlfriend, and Sarah's sister Debbie and her husband. An intimate family barbecue. It would be an ideal chance for her to talk to Mike and resolve their issues. She missed him so much that she could hardly bear it. The good news was that Sarah's mom told her that she had talked to Mike, and he was coming. Sure, she told Mike that Sarah wouldn't be there, but that was a white lie. Sarah's mom reasoned that if she could get them back together, all would eventually be forgiven. So Sarah had her chance. She needed to look her best for the barbecue. Sarah usually treated July 4th like just another holiday, but this one was going to be special. She was going to do whatever it took to get her husband back. Then she could actually celebrate something. It's strange, but since Mike left, it's affected me in ways I never would have expected. When Mike was home, I had my own little affairs to spice up our intimate life. I did this mainly to add excitement and variety to my life. There was nothing wrong with our intimate life. I just wanted more and more variety. But since Mike left, I haven't gone out on a date. Now that I have so much time for my pleasures, I simply have no interest in them. The main focus of my life is trying to win back the man I loved for over 20 years at any cost. She couldn't come to his work because the guards wouldn't let her in. She thought about making an appointment with someone in the building, but why would she bother with a manufacturing company? She thought about asking that guy Jake to make an appointment for her. Then she could have just waited for Emma to leave the office or waylay Mike on his way to or from the office. But every time she tried to contact Jake by phone, he simply hung up. It was weird because before they slept together, Jake was always talking to her on the phone. Once they did, he wanted nothing to do with her. She had dated a few of these guys in college, but she was sure that men must have evolved beyond that by then. The problem was that she expected every man to treat her like Mike. She wondered why he allowed his problems, whatever they were, to tear them apart. She still didn't know why he left. She turned it over in her mind several times. Mike was suffering from some sort of work-related stress disorder. He came home and got angry at her about something really stupid, but she didn't know what. Mike then simply packed his things and left. The only information she had about him for the past 3 weeks had come from their children and now from her mother. Her daughter seemed upset that Mike seemed to have another woman wherever he stayed. The thought that he might cheat on her made Sarah very sick, but she still wanted him back. Mike seemed to attribute his stress to her. He seemed to think that Sarah was to blame for all the stress in his life. If Mike really had a woman with him, Sarah would have forgiven him since he was probably out of his mind, but he should have ended the relationship immediately. There was no room for cheating in their marriage. In the back of her mind, Sarah was thinking about her little adventures, but her flings were different. There was no emotional connection between her and any of them. She only saw each guy once. It was only physical. The only man she truly loved was Mike. What Mike did, on the other hand, was wrong. He only seemed to be dating one woman, and Madison, their daughter, made it seem like that woman was living with Mike. Madison told her mother that she called her father late that night, and the woman picked up his cell phone. Her voice sounded familiar to Madison, but she couldn't figure out who it was. The woman told Madison that her father was in the shower and that she would ask him to call back as soon as possible. Either way, whatever was going on with Mike was going to be resolved in a few days at the July 4th barbecue. Sarah was surprised at how much she was looking forward to it. He might even come home with her that night. Sarah hadn't been intimate with anyone since Jake. She missed intimacy. She missed making love with her husband. July 4th couldn't come soon enough. Maybe you should get dressed, Mike said. Well, that's news, Emma laughed. Honestly, Mike, I don't remember a man saying that to me. Besides, it's just the two of us here. I've been wearing clothes all day at work. Now that we're home, I want to relax. If you weren't here, I probably wouldn't wear anything at all. Mike looked at Emma. He couldn't help but look at her. Emma was thin and short. She was also beautiful. Although her breasts were large, they were not huge. In fact, they were probably smaller than Sarah's, who had average-sized breasts. The difference was that Emma was so small that it made them seem huge. You could actually see her figure, just the edges of it from behind, because her torso was so narrow. Her waist was so thin that Mike could wrap both arms around her and touch his fingers. Her hips spread out from that thin waist, and her buttocks extended gracefully away from her spine. She had long, slender legs and always wore heels. Mike looked away from Emma before his eyes got him into trouble. In the 3 weeks since he moved in with Emma, things had moved very quickly. He started looking for his own apartment several times, but always stopped. The first time he picked up one of those apartment finding brochures, he left it on the kitchen table so he wouldn't forget to look at it. When he returned, the brochure had disappeared. He bought another one and it also disappeared. He found several sites and saved them to his favorites. He even bookmarked a few apartments for viewing. When he returned to look at them again, they had been removed from his favorites. He began to suspect that Emma had something to do with it. Before he could confront her about this, he was contacted by the lawyer who represented Sarah. The lawyer tried to convince him to accept counseling or face divorce from Sarah. His lawyer spoke with Sarah and her lawyer and was convinced that it was a ploy to get him to meet with Sarah. Mike's lawyer explained to him that if he allowed Sarah to file for divorce, he could gain some benefits. Their first meeting was scheduled for a few days after July 4th. Meanwhile, Mike and Emma were together almost 24/7. They ate together, worked together, and relaxed together. The only thing they didn't do at that time was sleep together. They went out to restaurants or to shows several times a week, but most evenings they just sat and talked on their balcony or watched TV together. We need to talk, Mike said. And what you're wearing prevents me from saying what I need to say. Emma jumped up and put on her robe. Okay, Mike, sir. Is that better, sir? She asked, giving him a mocking salute. Even the robe couldn't hide Emma's body, but it was a start. She sat down across from him on the couch, and her robe fell open to reveal a huge stretch of tan legs, making Mike's pants feel tighter in the crotch. Emma, you've done so much for me that I'll probably never be able to thank you enough, Mike began. but I'm starting to feel like I'm taking advantage of you. It's like I'm forcing you to put your life on hold. You're 24 years old. You should be dating and experiencing life. Don't sit in your apartment with me dealing with my issues with my wife." For a moment, Emma's eyes flashed with furious anger, but then she smiled at him, and her legs opened a little wider. "Mike, if you think you're taking advantage of me, then you might as well pay half the rent. If you weren't here, I'd still have to pay for it myself. Plus, the fact is you spent the last 3 weeks buying dinners for me, more than I spend on groceries. Your presence makes me feel protected and not so lonely. Despite what you think, you are not stopping my life. In fact, I feel like my life has just begun. I know my age. When you were the same age, you already had a child, didn't you?" Mike nodded. "So that means maybe it's time for me to get serious about life, and that's what I did, Mike. I'm dating someone, the someone you see all the time. You just don't know that we're meeting, and my life is fulfilled beyond words. You just haven't seen it yet. I don't see myself stuck here with you at all. I enjoy our time together more than anything. And Mike, daddy issues happen to girls who either never knew their fathers or didn't have the relationship they wanted. My dad was a wonderful man. He loved me and I loved him. He died of cancer in my sophomore year of college. My relationship with you has nothing to do with him or any fixation on fathers. Is there anything else you want to complain about?" Mike swallowed and then nodded. "Well, spit it out," she purred. "We are wasting time that we could spend watching TV. What will you do for the July 4th weekend?" Mike asked. "I usually either go spend it with my sister and her family or go out with friends," Emma said. "I was hoping we could just spend the holiday grilling burgers and relaxing together. I really enjoy doing that. Christmas or maybe next year if we're not married," Mike said. Then realizing what he had just said, he tried to correct himself. "I mean, unless either of us is married to someone else. It's not like we're married to each other." Emma simply smiled. She decided to let him go in peace this time to see what he wanted to do. "Okay, Mike, what do you mean?" she asked. Mike explained the whole barbecue situation at Sarah's parents' and who he thought would be there. In her heart of hearts, Emma was sure that even though Mike had been told Sarah wouldn't be there, she would be. "Okay, I'll go," she smiled. "But remember 2 things. First, I'm only doing this for you, and second, you owe me." Mike nodded and smiled. "Are we done with the serious talk of the day?" Emma asked. Mike nodded vigorously. He had never won an argument with Sarah in his life, and he could see that he would probably never win with Emma either. He considered it a victory that she allowed him to gain a few points in this conversation. Did he actually win anything? "Then I can relax again," she said. Emma took off her robe and placed her long legs on Mike's lap. Then she took the remote control and turned on the TV. "I'm guessing we will watch your show Monday Night Football first, right?" she asked. She mentioned Mike's favorite TV show. She was really happy with how things turned out. Perhaps now he would stop trying to move out of her apartment, at least until they were ready to move to a bigger place together. He also used the word "we" a few times, which was a big win. "Mike, honey, would you like a beer?" she asked. When he nodded, she lifted her legs from his lap and walked into the kitchen. She brought Mike a cold Bud Light and a Diet Pepsi for herself. Then she settled down on the couch next to him. This time she sat even closer to him. She rested her hips and buttocks against him, as if she were almost sitting on his lap, and wrapped one of his arms around her shoulders as they watched the game. As the announcers went through their commentary about the teams, Emma whispered in Mike's ear, "Mike, about the July 4th barbecue next year, what if we were married to each other?" Sarah took one last look at her outfit before heading to her mother's house. She chose her outfit with careful consideration, but also with very serious intentions. Her outfit was patriotic but tasteful. a white sleeveless blouse with small red stars embroidered on it, paired with navy blue capri pants. She added a red belt to emphasize her waist and give her figure a much-needed accent. It really didn't matter what she wore, Mike loved her anyway. But she wanted to wear something that would show him what he hadn't had in the past few weeks and remind him of better times. As a finishing touch, she pinned a small American flag pin to her blouse and put on red, white, and blue earrings. She even put some patriotic decorations in a bag to help with the barbecue setup and create a festive atmosphere that might help with reconciliation. With any luck, she'd bring her husband home with her tonight and hopefully forever. Then they could call off the divorce and have a serious conversation about what's wrong with Mike. She could also find out if she did something to trigger it. Her sister suggested that perhaps it was one of those moments that men go through when they reach a certain age. Some of them dyed their hair, some of them bought a sports car, and others decided to climb a mountain or run a marathon. She hoped that was all it was. Either way, she should have spent more time trying to make Mike happy and make their marriage work. Perhaps she should have spent less time planning her discreet dates and more time diversifying her intimate life with Mike. She hadn't been with anyone since Jake, and she was so eager that she would probably have been intimate with Mike in her parents' guest room if they left her unattended. As excited as she was, it had to be Mike. She missed him dearly, more than she could express in words. She was sure that he didn't really want a divorce either. He did not withdraw money from the accounts or file for divorce. His leaving hurt her a lot, but in the grand scheme of things, they would still be together forever. So it didn't hurt them. In fact, it might even strengthen their relationship. If Mike missed her half as much as she missed him, they would probably never be apart again. She could think of only one condition under which she could forgive him. He should either fire that Emma or make her apologize to Sarah. Sarah was sure Emma would rather quit than apologize to her, so it would be the same thing. This little witch was too interested in Mike for Sarah's liking. This went on for too long. It was time to stop this. Sarah got into her car and drove to her mother's house. When she got to the door, her brother-in-law Kevin opened it. Sarah still couldn't figure out why the hell her sister married Kevin. He was overweight and awkward. He also hadn't worked for more than 4 years. He spent all his time either playing video games or reading comics. Strangely, he turned down a job at a comic book store. He said something about not wanting to dilute his passion for art by accepting money for it. It didn't make sense at all. He stood in the same store for hours every Wednesday when new comics came out. He argued about the same books and discussed the same characters with the same other nerds. Why didn't he do it and get paid for it? At least if he worked in a store, he would bring home some money for it. "Hey Sarah, you look good," Kevin said. "Listen, Kevin," Sarah replied sharply. "Mike will be here today too. Please don't drive him away by talking about Lord of the Rings or Harry Potter. Can we have at least one holiday like normal people? You can talk about football or baseball or something that normal guys like instead of wizards and all this nonsense." Kevin almost slammed the door in Sarah's face. She rushed in and walked past him. He said under his breath, "No wonder Mike left you." Debbie came into the room and hugged Sarah. "I thought you weren't coming," Debbie said. "Mom told everyone you weren't coming to force Mike to come." "At least you could have told me," Debbie complained. "Why would you tell everyone?" Sarah asked. "Sooner or later, you would have told someone who knew Mike. They would have told him and Mike would have come. But I look like a mess," Debbie said. "Mike is so handsome. If I knew he was coming, I could have dressed up like you." "Debbie, Mike is my husband. I dressed up because we're having problems, and I need him back. It's like when that loser was unemployed and left you and went back to live in his mom's basement a few years ago," Sarah said. Debbie simply smiled. "Yes, but my darling is back with me now, and everything is better than ever." "How?" Sarah asked. You started putting pressure on him because you were working 2 jobs at the hospital to pay the mortgage. He was sitting at home doing nothing, eating junk food and reading comics. He didn't even clean the house. Plus, you paid for all of his damn comic books. You wanted him to get a job to take some of the pressure off of you, remember? You needed extra income because you were thinking about having a baby. But Sarah, that was before I understood how things really worked, Debbie said. Oh God, I need to hear this, Sarah said. Is it working now? Well, no, said Debbie, but I had to look at our relationship in real terms. Kevin doesn't hit me. He doesn't go out and cheat on me with other women. The fact that he's home all the time means I don't have to worry about anyone breaking into our house. And I don't need a baby because I already have Kevin, and he's a big kid at heart. Tell her, honey, Kevin said from some corner of the house. You two are perfect for each other, Sarah chuckled. Sarah went into her mother's kitchen. Her mother turned and smiled as Sarah entered the room. Hi, Sarah, she said. I'm glad you're here. I need you for. Sorry, Mom. Better ask Debbie to do it. I can't afford to get this outfit dirty. I need to look good when Mike comes. Her mom just looked at Sarah and bit her lip. Sarah returned to the living room just in time to see her son arrive. To say she was shocked was an understatement. Her son had changed in the last 10 weeks that he had been at school. He had gained several kilograms, well, more than a few, actually. He was starting to look a little like Kevin, except he had some tattoos on his arms. Her clean-shaven, conservative son now had a shaved head, a full beard, and a few tattoos on his forearms. For a big guy, his hands were disproportionately small. It looked like he had been working out but had gone overboard with the body modifications. He even had a small tattoo behind his ear. Why would anyone get a tattoo there? Sarah needed to replace her iced tea with something stronger. When Mike comes, she was sure he'd be concerned thinking about all the money they spend sending their son to college so he could start looking like he belonged in a motorcycle gang. Good luck finding a decent job looking like that, she thought. And now the girl he brought with him. She looked quite alternative, dressed in dark clothes with dramatic makeup. Her style was more artistic than extreme, but still quite different from what Sarah was used to. She seemed nice enough when Sarah introduced herself, and her appearance, while unconventional, wasn't as shocking as Sarah had initially feared. Sarah decided that no matter how her son's style had changed, he was lucky to have a girlfriend. Perhaps she shouldn't judge a book by its cover. This girl could become the future mother of her grandchildren. Sarah walked over and introduced herself. The girl smiled at Sarah politely. Honey, asked Sarah. What's with the dramatic look? Oh, I'm really into alternative fashion and art, the girl said in a soft voice. Tyler thinks it's cool, and it's how I express myself. Sarah didn't know whether to worry or just accept it. She would be very happy when Mike arrived. Hey, Dad, Sarah said across the room to her father, who was watching the baseball game on TV. Her father raised his glass, and Sarah wondered what he was drinking. Whatever it was, she needed some of it. Where's Mike? Asked her father. We're taking a little break, Dad, Sarah said. What did you do to him? Asked her father. At that moment, Debbie, who was talking to Sarah's son Tyler and his girlfriend Anna, gasped loudly. You did what? She said in shock. Debbie walked away from the couple and returned to the kitchen. Sarah walked up to her son and his girlfriend. She was glad to be away from her father. She couldn't believe that her own father thought it was her fault that Mike had left her. Tyler, what did you tell your aunt? Asked Sarah. Oh, Mom, I just told her how we both decided not to have kids, Tyler said. Sarah felt her heart skip a beat. What do you mean? She asked carefully. It's not a big deal, Tyler said. We just decided we don't want children. We're focusing on our careers and travel. Anna's going to art school, and I'm thinking about graduate school. Sarah heard her father's relieved laughter coming from across the room. She just stood there, processing what her son had said. Is this a permanent decision? She asked. Tyler just shrugged. We're young. We want to enjoy life. Sarah walked across the room and sat down next to her father. What are you drinking, Dad? She asked. Bourbon and Coke, he said, tipping his glass in her direction. So now my only hope for grandchildren depends on your daughter, he said, referring to Madison. They listened as Kevin argued with Anna about which was better, DC Comics or Marvel. Anna told him that she preferred independent graphic novels and thought both major publishers were too commercial. Sarah and her father looked at each other, and he took a long sip from his glass. At least she's got some sense, her father said. I'm just saying. At that moment, the doorbell rang. It's great having the family together for July 4th, Kevin said, standing up to answer the door. We have the comic book nerd, the art student, the tattooed guy, Sarah the... Kevin stopped talking mid-sentence. Mike who? Sarah snapped. She settled herself on the armrest of her father's chair, trying to look as attractive as possible. He, brought his, Kevin said. His own what, idiot? Sarah asked. His own knockout, Kevin said dreamily. Mike walked into the room, followed by Emma, who held his hand tightly. At this point, everything seemed to slow down. Sarah saw that Mike had brought Emma with him and nearly fell off the arm of her chair in surprise. Her father, who hardly ever left his chair, caught Emma's eye, stood up and walked to the door. Tyler saw Emma and started trying to adjust his shirt to hide some of his tattoos. Debbie came out from the kitchen to see Mike and froze in her tracks when she saw Emma. Anna looked at Emma with what appeared to be admiration. Finally, Sarah's mother came out of the kitchen to see why the house had suddenly become so quiet. Hi, Mike, Sarah's mom said. It's great to have you here. And who is this lovely young lady? Hey, Mom, this is Emma, Mike said, as if that explained everything. Emma stepped forward and gave Sarah's mom the bottle of wine she and Mike had brought and took the covered dish for Mike. It's a flag cake for dessert, Emma said. I made it myself with strawberries and blueberries. Did you really make this yourself? Kevin asked with delight. Can I help you set up the barbecue? Emma asked. Sarah's mom smiled widely. Of course you can, honey, she said, taking Emma's hand and leading her to the back patio. Why the hell did you bring her? Debbie hissed quietly. Your mom said I could bring someone, Mike said and shrugged. She's somebody. Come on over here, Mike. Let's watch the game, Sarah's father said. God, she's so beautiful, Tyler said. 20 minutes later, the living room was quiet except for the sound of the television. Mike and his soon-to-be ex-father-in-law were watching the Cincinnati Reds play the Cardinals. Across the room, Tyler, Kevin, Sarah, Debbie, and Anna were all looking out at the back patio where Emma was helping set up the barbecue. She's gorgeous, said Tyler. She's unreal, Kevin said, which earned him a kick in the shin from his wife. She's a witch, Debbie said. I hate her, Sarah said. I think she's really cool, Anna said. She seems nice. 20 minutes later, Emma came in from the patio and walked into the living room. It was a miracle that she was able to navigate around all the furniture in her casual sandals without tripping. She settled herself on the arm of Mike's chair, just as Sarah had done on the arm of her father's chair an hour ago. She leaned over Mike, and her head rested on his shoulder. Sarah started to cross the room towards her, but Debbie stopped her. I know you're angry, sister, Debbie said, but don't ruin Mom and Dad's July 4th. Wait until after we eat. Then I'll distract her by asking about her outfit or something, and you can talk to Mike. After a while, they all gathered on the back patio around the picnic tables. The tables were beautifully set with red, white, and blue tablecloths and patriotic decorations. The smell of hamburgers and hot dogs filled the summer air from the barbecue grill. There were large bowls of potato salad, coleslaw, and baked beans. A cooler full of cold drinks sat nearby, and small American flags decorated the table. Sarah's father stood up to say a blessing for the meal, but was interrupted. "Hey, Anna, you can't eat this food, remember? You have to maintain your artistic figure," Kevin said. "Kevin, honey, shut up," Debbie said across the table. Anna looked irritated, and then it began. Sarah noticed Emma and Mike holding hands. She couldn't stand it anymore. She grabbed a bowl of potato salad and threw it at Emma, who somehow dodged most of the creamy mixture. Emma quickly grabbed a hamburger bun and threw it across the table as hard as she could. The bun hit Sarah right between the eyes, and she screamed. She grabbed a handful of coleslaw and threw it at Emma, who dodged behind Mike. Sarah realized she had thrown coleslaw on her husband and screamed again. Anna took a moment to throw a handful of baked beans at Kevin. The beans were still warm when they hit Kevin in the face. The big, clumsy man was furious. He got up from the table quickly, walked around it, and began to argue loudly with Anna. Tyler stood up and tried to get between his uncle and his girlfriend, and the two men ended up in a shouting match with Anna caught in the middle. By this time, Sarah and Emma also stood up and began to walk around the table towards each other. Debbie again tried to hold back her sister, who started all this. Sarah was so furious with Emma that she pushed her own sister aside in an attempt to get to Emma. Emma had decided by then that she was tired of being the target of Sarah's attention. She grabbed the bowl of barbecue sauce and threw the whole thing at Sarah. The bowl did not reach the target and fell to the patio floor far from its target, but the sauce splattered everywhere, covering Sarah and ruining her patriotic outfit, hair, and face. Sarah also slipped on the slippery mess and fell on her backside. There was chaos throughout the patio. Only Mike and Sarah's parents did not participate. Sarah's father walked over to the house, opened the front door, and took something out from a drawer near the entrance. His hand appeared with a starter pistol, which he fired once into the air to get everyone's attention. "Damn it! Stop it now!" Sarah's father shouted. "Look what you've done." He started pointing at various people. "Emma, Sarah, you threw the sauce at her and started all this," Debbie said. "I was only reacting to what she did," Sarah replied sharply. "She held my husband's hand right in front of my face." "You mean ex-husband," Emma said. "You filed for divorce from him. That makes him a free man." Everyone around the table gasped in shock. "Is this true, Mom?" Tyler asked. Sarah nodded without looking up. "I don't want a divorce," she screamed, her voice on the verge of breaking. "I only did it because your father left. I needed to get his attention so we could talk. The divorce should never have happened." "There was always going to be a divorce," Mike said. "You just filed for it before I was ready." "But why did you cheat on me, dear?" Sarah asked. "I love you." "Yes," Mike said. "You love me enough to cheat on me for months. I know it wasn't Jake's first time, Sarah. You broke my heart. You should have known that if I found out about your cheating, there would be no hope for us." Everyone around the table fell silent. Nothing was said for several moments, and then Sarah's father broke the silence. "Sarah," he said, "he's not telling the truth, is he?" Sarah couldn't see her father's eyes. "It was only physical," she said very quietly. "It didn't mean anything. There was no love there. I just wanted a little variety." Debbie exclaimed, "Sarah, you are a worthless fool. As much as I love Kevin's lazy behind with all his quirks, I would die to have what you just ruined." "Hey," Kevin said. "Shut up, Kevin," Debbie said. "Mike loved you, or loved you, Sarah. He talked about you like you were something special, and he went out of his way to give you everything you asked for. For years, you bragged about how good he was. You lied." "No," said Sarah. "He's just been so tired from work lately that we've cut it down to 3 or 4 times a week. I kind of need more. It's not like any of the guys I've dated have been that good, so that's why I just thought that as long as we didn't talk about it, I'd get a little extra on the side." "I'll take 4 times a week," Emma said. "How often do you guys do this now?" Debbie asked. "We're not like that," Emma said. "Not yet." "But," Sarah said. "I thought so," Sarah said. "I've loved Mike for many years, but we didn't do anything intimate at all," Emma began. "Still," said Mike, who had not said much until now. "Mike loved you with all his heart," Emma said. "I knew it would take him a long time to forget you, but you hurt him so much that he now has trust issues. I think deep down he just wanted to somehow get back to you and still maintain the relationship. His pride. I think he never imagined he could be happy with anyone else." "How many times have you cheated on him?" Sarah's father asked. Everyone at the table looked at her. "I don't remember," Sarah said. "Try really hard," her mother said. "Give us the damn number, Sarah. You went to college. It shouldn't be that hard." "Mom, was it more than 5? Sarah asked silently. "More than 10, Debbie asked in shock. Sarah nodded again. Kevin took the opportunity to cough, but instead of just coughing normally, he coughed out, "Slut." "Was it more than?" her father began. "Please stop asking," Mike said. He stood up, and everyone around the table could see the tears running down his cheeks. Sarah wanted to approach him, but he raised his hand, warning her to stay away from him. "Mom and Dad," Mike began, "I'm really sorry. I've always called you that because ever since I met you, you've become a second parent to me. Thank you for inviting me into your home again. I'm sorry for the way things turned out and for ruining your July 4th celebration." Everyone could tell that Mike was barely holding it together. "Tyler, I haven't had a chance to discuss your new look with you yet, but son, we need to talk." Tyler looked at his father and nodded. Kevin chose that moment to laugh. "Damn it, you guys picked the worst women," Kevin said. "Mike married a cheater, and Tyler is dating an art student who looks like she's never seen the sun." Sarah's father took this opportunity to point the starter pistol at Kevin. "I'm losing here too," he said. "I'm losing the wrong son-in-law. The one I want to keep in the family will probably divorce my daughter. If my daughter wants to get divorced, my other daughter probably won't care. If you keep talking, I might just put us both out of our misery." Kevin looked around and began putting food on his plate. "It might as well not go to waste," he said. Anna looked at Kevin with disgust. Mike turned to Emma and extended his hand. "It's time for us to go home, he said. Over the next week, Sarah called Mike repeatedly, but to no avail. Mike never answered the call and finally blocked her calls. They met at her lawyer's office to discuss the division of property, and Sarah tried in every possible way to delay the process. She insisted on undergoing counseling. She missed meetings. She made absurd demands. She wanted a 90-10 split of all their assets in her favor. She wanted 98% of Mike's income and spousal support. She knew that no court would satisfy her demands, but the refusal to deviate from them further delayed the divorce process. Mike and Emma were happy. Mike saw his goal of freeing himself from Sarah. He continued to work in this direction and knew that he would eventually achieve it. Sarah could only drag out the divorce. She couldn't prevent it. Emma, on the other hand, was delighted. All she ever wanted was Mike, and now she had him. Her only concern was making him happy. One morning, just after New Year's, the police arrived at their office. They needed Mike to come with them. They didn't say why. Emma insisted on going with them. They took Mike to the morgue. There, in a separate office, he was told that Sarah had been killed. She was strangled in a cheap motel on New Year's Eve. It was suspected that she met her killer on the internet. There had been a series of murders of women who met men on dating sites. A few days later, the family gathered to say goodbye to Sarah. Despite how their marriage and relationship ended, Mike couldn't help but cry. Emma was always there to help him hold it together. As the family gathered to watch the cremation, no one spoke until Anna broke the silence. "What a waste," she said. "Yes," Kevin agreed. "She would still be alive if she could have kept her legs together." "No," Anna said sharply. "I mean, if people had talked to her more, maybe she wouldn't have felt so lonely. She probably just needed someone to listen to her." Everyone present, including the crematorium employee, looked at Anna with surprise. It was the most insightful thing anyone had heard her say. "Hey, Anna," Kevin said. "That's actually pretty deep." "I'm not just a pretty face," Anna said with a slight smile. In the months following Sarah's death, many changes occurred in her family. Mike quickly realized that there was no point in grieving for Sarah endlessly. He moved on with his life, returned to his home, and moved in with Emma. They married less than 6 months after that. The following July 4th, they all got together again, this time for a barbecue at Mike and Emma's home. Sarah and Debbie's parents had to travel from their new RV. They had sold their house, bought a motor home, and were traveling around the country, enjoying their retirement. Debbie arrived alone and looked much better. Emma gave her fashion and style tips, and the two women became friends. Debbie had divorced Kevin shortly after Sarah's death, when she finally realized he would never change. Tyler was there with his new girlfriend, a very beautiful and very normal college student. He wore a long-sleeve shirt to cover most of his tattoos and was looking into laser removal. He had also started taking his studies more seriously. Kevin came too, but he came alone. Kevin and his nephew were civil to each other now. There had been some arguments between them over the past year, but Mike had helped them work through their issues. Kevin had finally gotten a part-time job at a local game store and seemed happier. Anna was there with her new boyfriend, a fellow art student who seemed to appreciate her creativity. She had maintained her artistic style but seemed more confident and outgoing. Thank you for your viewing. See you next time. If you enjoyed this, subscribe to